We're moderating the event tonight. I'm going to go over a few housekeeping things. There are restrooms out the hall to the right. If you follow the hallway for the restroom signs, there are 3 restrooms. A little brief rundown of what you can expect tonight. Produced by Sunlight Media Collective about the landfill at Juniper Ridge. It's about 14 minutes, and following that film, we're going to turn it over to speakers who Don will be introducing, who were part of the film, and will be able to give us a sense of what it's like to live near a landfill. This forum, as you all know, is in response to them for coming here tonight as well. We honor you, we honor your struggle, and we honor the river that we share. And I'm going to pass it on to Don to introduce our speakers.
I got 2 here, Tracey.
I'm not going to pass it on.
Can you hear me without it? Yes. Can you hear me fine? As Tracey said, thanks for coming. This is our second forum that we've held here, where, as you know, there's been a proposal, a verbal proposal, as Tracey pointed out, to reopen the Bucksport Mill landfill. The Bucksport Mill landfill, as we speak, has problems already. All landfills do. It's not particular to Bucksport. You're going to hear really what some of the problems that our friends from Juniper Ridge here have lived with for the past 20-something years. Theirs started out like this did, just a mill landfill. I'm going to show a film that the visuals will tell you. The visuals will tell you what it's like. So, do we have it together, Tracey? Almost. Well, we've almost got it together. So, there's going to be a chance for you guys to speak. Our friend John Banks, who was the 40-year resource. What was your title there, John?
Natural Resources Director.
Okay. For the Penobscot Nation, he's going to say a couple of words too about what the river means and what landfills mean. So I think we're going to try to kill the lights and show you this film. It'll say a lot.
I've lived in West Old Town since about 1978, and my home would be located over that way about 3 miles. It's a 1.75 miles southwest of this pile you see behind us here. And originally, the Old Town paper mill kind of forced in a landfill over there, but it was nothing like what you're seeing now.
Maine had a law that there can't be a new commercial landfill. The whole purpose of that law was to create a legal way of keeping out-of-state waste out of Maine. So they came up with this idea. The state as an owner can be a market participant and say, we won't accept materials from out of state. But they never took the time, they never were interested enough in keeping it out to make that stipulation.
We have a situation of information imbalance, and all people are not empowered equally to have access to the same sorts of information. How are these imbalances working to the disadvantage of our public process?
That is a state state-owned landfill, and that is supposed to be space for the state of Maine's trash. And because of a couple of loopholes in the way definitions are written, they're essentially filling that up with out-of-state waste.
So at this point, you have a private waste industry that is dependent on public subsidies to be operating. It has also become dependent on the imports of out-of-state waste, very large volumes, growing volumes of out-of-state waste.
The applicant will not accept solid waste generated from out-of-state sources in West Old Town landfill. What it says is, we own this landfill as a state of Maine, and we're not letting out-of-state waste in. What it doesn't say is there's a whole category of waste that comes from out-of-state that we don't categorize as out-of-state. Casella figured out the state can buy it, they can rent it out to Casella for 30 years, and Casella can bring in out-of-state waste if the state allows them to. See? So in essence, it's just, we're gonna let it in by another name.
The classification of out-of-state waste as Maine-generated waste snuck in gradually between 1999 and the present day through rulemaking and legislation, and the numbers of lobbyists for the waste industry will usually far outnumber the number of legislators who are considering these issues in committees. Out-of-state waste can become in-state waste through a so-called recycling facility or through incineration. So the truck comes from Massachusetts to a so-called recycling facility, they pull off some metals that they can get extra money for.
If they pull one 2x4 out of 80,000 pounds of waste, the remaining 79,975 pounds is now Maine waste and able to be legally landfilled here in Maine.
Now, the incineration side of this was in part how this loophole made its way into state law, but a good number of the facilities that were accepting this construction waste byproduct for fuel are no longer in operation because the subsidies that were created in the late 70s ended up running out. Now, the so-called recycling facilities, specifically Re-Energy out of Lewiston, are still taking in as much or more construction demolition debris as before the biomass burners shut down, and they need somewhere for it to go.
Over 90% of the inputs to Re-Energy come from out of state, and 93% of what leaves Re-Energy comes right here.
Re-Energy, which is operating on a site that was formerly operated by Casella, once the biomass facilities were no longer buying the large amounts of construction demolition debris fuel chips from them, all of a sudden they started pushing the legislators that they need increasing amounts of construction demolition debris and other bulky wastes to cover the landfill at the end of each day because they are now taking in more sludge. So at the end of the day, you have the landfill with all these exposed smelly materials, and in order to stabilize the landfill from these wet materials, they need more of these other hard bulky materials, so-called alternative daily cover. And their argument is if they don't use that, then they would have to use virgin soil, so they're somehow saving the environment, they're recycling by doing this, but their biggest profit is from landfilling since they receive tipping fees for every ton of waste that is disposed in a landfill, so it's to their economic benefit to increase the amount of waste coming into those landfills. Other landfills have much smaller surface area exposed on the landfill, so it's not as much of a challenge to cover the whole area at the end of the day. As it is now, you have 6 to 10 acres exposed every day. You have to cover those 6 to 10 acres with construction and demolition debris, so it requires an increasingly large volume of this material, and the only way that material can legally go into the state-owned landfill is as Maine-generated waste. waste operation?
Well, you know, if it walks like a duck and quacks like a duck, it's a duck. This is a commercial landfill. The state is just providing cover for a new commercial landfill.
That pile behind us, the level part on top, I estimate it's 900 feet long. Anytime
Where is it over
rains,
there?
if we get a thunderstorm
Sure.
this afternoon that drops an inch of rain, that's gonna be an inch of rain over 8 or 10 acres of exposed ground. And all that is going to perk and filter down through all the chemicals, all the poisons, all the contaminants, and end up in the bottom. And that's called leachate. Then that leachate is gonna be hauled by truck out of here, down the Old Town Mill. They put it into their treatment center designed for mill waste, not for leachate. And it's gonna be, make some corrections for pH possibly. And it's gonna be aerated to reduce the amount of, BODs, present in it. And then it's basically gonna be released in the Penobscot River untreated.
Most of the wastewater treatment plants where landfill leachate is being discharged are older industrial wastewater discharge sites that were only designed for certain materials, and either paper mill waste, tannery waste, or what would be expected in a general municipal wastewater sewage. Either way, though, this is waste that's, again, not being allowed for disposal in surrounding states landfills, and Maine is getting a concentration of it. None of these were designed for landfill leachate by any means. And again, unless there is a self-reported violation, the state is not expending resources to second-guess the industry that is effectively self-monitoring and self-regulating at this point.
So now that this facility is operational again, we'd like to put up a temperature recorder just downstream of the outfall, so we can kind of keep an eye on what the change in temperature is due to the discharge that comes out of this facility.
So there's, what do you say there was again? I think 8 works. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
The way the permit right now for the non-Dragon facility, which receives the leachate from the Juniper Ridge Landfill, the way that is written, there are very few toxic pollutants that they have to monitor on a frequent basis. Once a quarter, they have to do what's called wet testing, so they collect a sample that then gets separated into like different concentrations, and they expose aquatic life. And at different concentrations, they're looking to see whether there is acute or chronic toxicity at different dilutions. Essentially, they're looking to see whether it kills them or not. But that's not telling you what's killing them per se. It's just one way of looking at all of the things that are found in that effluent. And then in addition to that, they have to take one sample per year. It's basically what's called a priority pollutant scan. So there's a whole list of chemicals that they have to test for. But you have to be looking for those specific chemicals. And, you know, the big concern we have is the material that's going into the landfill is a very complex mixture that comes from all over the place. It doesn't come just from Maine, it comes from other states. And that one day that you collected that sample, is that representative of what's going on all the time? You're putting all your eggs in that basket of that one sample a year or the one sample a quarter, that you are going to get hit on that pollutant at a high enough level that will then cause DEP to say, oh, you have reasonable potential to be exceeding the health criteria, and therefore we are going to put that into your permit in the future. So it's not a permit limit until it becomes a permit limit. And to have one tested year be the thing that's going to tell you whether or not certain toxic contaminants are found in there and what the levels are
areas where we respected the water. We were taught to swim here, we were taught to fish here, that was our livelihood. Now I don't even dare to stick my foot in there because I don't know what's in the water.
The Penobscot was running as clean as it had for over a century. It's the largest river system in the state of Maine, and not to mention home to the Penobscot Nation. And, you know, it's just shameful, the disrespect shown by our own state government. The state has never spoken about the state's interests. And hopefully I'll live long enough to see when the state's interest is they realize this pile of supposedly safe, secure landfill is a very valuable asset for the people of Maine, and it should be reserved and preserved for the citizens of Maine. And what we're trying to do is restore a common sense definition of what Maine waste is. It's very convoluted now, and what we're going to say is any Maine waste has to be waste that was discarded for the first time within the boundaries of Maine. That's what we want.
Great. So I think we can all agree that film is hard to watch. We're here tonight not because of the out-of-state waste loophole, as much as we are here about just the general idea of a C&D landfill opening up, back up in our neighborhoods. One thing to keep in mind is the loophole, while we may have heard it's been closed, it's yet to be challenged in court. And so we can't really take for granted that that loophole is closed. And so I'm going to pass it on to our speakers who know much more about this on a much more visceral level than I do. Thanks for coming.
Well, I'll start out. I've had the privilege of living on the same plot of land for 75 years. And that all changed in 2004 when Casella became our neighbor. We were a group of 8 families in our neighborhood. Most of the homes now are owned by Casella. There's only my husband and myself and our son, daughter-in-law, and 2 granddaughters that live, you know, right at the entrance. And the new expansion, you know, you see these pictures from 2 years ago. Now the landfill is right across the street from our house. So, you know, at 6 a.m. you wake up with the compactors, you know, rattling the ground. And now, luckily this winter, the ground hasn't been as frozen, but we had a couple of weeks where, I mean, you know, things on the wall moved. It's, you know, horrible. But, you know, we thought, you know, Casella, when they first came to Alton to sell this story, you know, neighbors never complain about us. You know, we're really good neighbors. Then all of a sudden, the 6 other families all sold their homes to Casella. So, you know, one of the houses, they burnt down, they moved one, well, they moved 2 of them, and the others are occupied by Casella employees. You know, it used to be you could open your windows. Now we live, you know, with our windows closed because of noise, dust. You know, today there was 130 loads of material that went into the landfill. Remember, 130, that's 260 trucks coming on. They're, you know, doing a new expansion of a new cell, so you got all the construction trucks, you know, going in. And, you know, the sad part of this is there's no third-party reporting. everything, we have to take what Casella, says. DEP, we learned very, early in the process, DEP is not they do not support regulations. They're a licensing agency. And these fees that they charge for, $2,000, they can get all their licenses for a year for Juniper Ridge. I mean, something's wrong, with our thing. And, my biggest gripe is the state of Maine has no future landfill, waste issue, itinerary, nothing. We're not even, I know now that the state has a landfill that they own, another closed mill site in Lincoln, Carpenter Ridge, and they are starting to reach out to abutters there. And so, how, my questions here are, who will own this landfill in Bucksport? Will the state of Maine come in and buy it? They don't have money. Who will operate it? You have a lot of questions, to be answered. And when you do get, if it does happen, the MRC tried to do one in Argyle, which is an adjacent, unorganized area to Alton where we live, and people just like yourself made a difference. They said, no, we don't want it. So I think, that's the path you've got to take. So I'll let you talk to Harry or Ed who wants to go. Go ahead.
Well, for starters, thanks so much for inviting us here. And I'm honored, and it's great to meet people like Don and now Tracey and everybody else so far in Bucksport. And I think you're doing the right thing. I think you're coming together as a community. You're trying to hold your officials accountable. And I'm a little envious because we just never had that chance. It was a done deal, and it's kind of reminiscent of what's happening right now with Casella doing this bully move of theirs, saying, unless we have out-of-state waste, we can't have a safe landfill in Maine without out-of-state waste. Well, what the hell? I mean, why are they the operators then? If they can't do it with the waste that's from Maine, I mean, So, but then it was worse because it was, this is a mill town. I work in the woods. And I used to have a contract. I had a little 2-cord truck. I'd come down here and they'd unload my pulpwood, And Bucksport was a good mill town, But up in Old Town, they had union members pushing against us. They had, I was banned from attending their union hall, a function. Remember that, Laura? And, and it was, the governor's office was getting played for fools. They were after the votes and some money. So it was completely unfair, but it happened. So we found out about it. I was the first one to go down to the Old Town City Council and raise some concerns, and I never felt so alone in my life, And then Peter Dufour got up behind me, and he was a former city councilor, and I said, well, maybe I'm not so alone. And then, but there was, they had, the waste industry. Let me say for starters, I think the policy enacted in 1989 where there would be no new commercial landfills in Maine, that everything would have to be publicly owned. I think that's very good policy, almost an enlightened policy. However, they never developed the rules. So you got this waste industry, and they got handed 10 million cubic yards of permitted landfill space where they didn't even have to hold a public hearing, right? So, and they'll say, oh, like now I read in the paper, oh, Casella paid for the privilege. They borrowed $25 million through fame, right? That was 19, 20 years ago. And maybe they've paid off 5 million of it. So they get this favorable loan, and meanwhile, they've made, I think, billions on it, you know? So it's just such a complex issue. And one of the things I want to speak about is, for one thing, this is your town. You know, we live in a democracy. You have the right and you have really the obligation to take care of yourselves and don't leave anybody out, you know, but there is such a threat. Something about the waste industry, they don't believe in any rules, you know. At some point, they'll tell you, oh, it's construction and demolition debris. You think, well, that's great, you know. So-and-so down the street's putting an addition on and they got to tear out some stuff, and sure, that's great. Well, it's a very general term. It can be anything, and a lot of it's just any roll-off from anywhere, you know, is what ends up being in it, especially if it's Casella. It just turns people against people and just damages our very democracy. You know, like what's going on right now is Casella, they don't like this. After 19 years, we finally got a restriction to narrow down that loophole that allowed all the in-state. So we were told two things at the beginning. They said it over and over again. There will be no out-of-state waste in this landfill, right? There will be no MSW, that's curbside garbage, in this landfill. And I'm telling you, half of it is that now. So they get their foot in the door, and then it's like, we'll write the rules around here. You know, you're really hard up against it. But I think you people, like I said, I think you're doing the right things. We want to hear you speak when we get done, and you know, and we'd like to help. There's other people that can help. So one thing I wanted to mention, that I mentioned this to Mr. Tomaso, is that in the DEP has a book of rules, in the Chapter 2 rules. Well, part of that, I think it's Section 27, I'm not sure on that, but, and you can, it says any person may petition for license revocation. Well, AIM must hold the license to this landfill. And there's like half a dozen to a dozen criteria for revocation. And that might be something that's worth looking into. And you can do it as an individual. You may have to prove standing, which is why when we've appealed license changes, like, I don't know, 8, 9, 10 times, and it's usually my name on it, it's because these good people are 1.75 miles from the landfill. Actually, it's getting less now. And we're 1.75 miles the exact opposite way. So when I hear we're going to have a northeaster, there's a northeast wind today, right? I'm thinking, oh hell, is it going to stink? And it's been smelling worse, and it's been smelling different, and it's kind of ominous. We don't really know what's going on there. So you never want to get into that situation, let alone it's a ticking time bomb for the future. Look what's happening with this river, It's as free-flowing as it has been for over 100 years. There's alewives coming up here by the multi-million. Now, we go up the river, if you're from an alewives perspective, and if you could possibly take a left and go up the Stillwater River where it flows back into the Penobscot. But probably go up the main stem. There's a lift at the remaining dam there in Old Town Milford, and then take a left on Pushaw Stream. Well, where Cheryl and I live is between Pushaw Stream and Kirkland Road, so we're on the opposite side of Pushaw Stream from the landfill. But there's a little, just upstream Pushaw Stream, there's an unnamed brook that comes down there. And we haven't noticed pollution in there. It seems like it's a beautiful place to take a canoe down through. But we're afraid for the future. And with this odor, like Laura mentioned, you don't feel comfortable leaving your windows open in the summertime. Just last November, our son and his wife, our 3 granddaughters visiting from Colorado. And one day we went outside. It smelled so bad. We had to change our plans, And so guess who you go to when you have an odor complaint? The town doesn't want to hear it. Old Town doesn't want to hear about it. You can go to the code enforcement. Well, when they did the expansion, the code enforcement guy, we later found out through FOIA, had told the planning board that Mr. Spencer was going to bring them disinformation to the meeting. So you think you think the code guy's going to listen to my odor complaint? No, save your breath. So a couple months ago, the police chief, all I wanted them to do was have the officers, when you're on your rounds and it smells really bad, and sometimes it's like you're afraid to breathe, just make a notation, time, where we are. I'm not saying do anything about it. He said they have a way to handle that. So you've lost the citizens' control of our own safety mechanism. Now if someone has their hands around your neck, rest assured and you call the police, they're going to come running and they're going to do something about it, And they're not going to say, oh, you need to talk to the person who's choking you. Sure, But that's the situation. So we're working to, get some kind of positive changes out of this, but once it gets started, it is so hard, and just don't let it get to that point. And whatever you think the money's going to be, see the lawyer's fees for something like this, So I guess I've gone on quite a while, but why don't I turn it over to Eric?
Good evening. Very happy to be here with you tonight. What I want you to learn is the definitions of terms you're going to hear. Because what you hear and what they actually mean, two vast differences. For instance, if this goes to a certain level, you'll have public meetings here. And they're going to discuss what's the public benefit. Now, what is public benefit? And who does it benefit? It's not what you think it is. State of Maine has no definition of public benefit. If they're going to bring in some CDD from Massachusetts, we might be becoming a public benefit to 500,000 residents of Massachusetts. So learn what it is. Minor revisions. You look in the paper or your butters. If you've got a butters near this landfill, residential abutters, they'll get a notice of everything that's going on. And you want them, if they're not on your side, you want to get them on your side. Promise them anything, but make sure they show you everything they get. Because a minor revision could be, and you got to read what the state says for a conclusion to understand it. They might want to transfer their license to some other company. And at the end, when it gets to the conclusion, the state will say, it doesn't adversely change the permit. We're just changing the name. We're not adding anything. We're not taking away anything. Or it could be that, well, for instance, when they tore the mill down here, there was a minor revision issued to AIM to put all that, I think it was 48,000 tons. Anyway, a minor revision to put it into the landfill. So you want to learn that. Bypass. Well, what is bypass? If CDD is supposed to go someplace and they don't have any room for it, or one line is down, or two lines are down, it just gets bypassed. Well, guess where it goes? It goes directly to the landfill. So you want to learn about that. Out of state, we've pretty well beat that horse to death. And you'll see the terminology often, the minimum performance standards. Well, what is minimum performance standards? It's the least amount of work you have to do to get by. It isn't the best job. It isn't the worst job, but it's the minimum you have to do. So that's one you want to remember. And you'll see bonding. They'll have to provide a performance bond. Now, in a prior lifetime, when I was developing some territory, I had the ability to request bonds for a certain amount. But we always use ratings by AM Best. And I'm going to leave that for you, the rating things. Everything here is yours. So if they're going to give you a $10 million bond, but they buy it from an insurance company that only has a net worth of $500,000, guess what happens when you try to collect on that bond? They're bankrupt, and they could care less. They've already got their money. The insurance company makes their money on the percentage that they charge. So you want to learn that. And I want to also talk to you about, it's your community, and nobody knows what you want better than you do. And any of us that came down tonight, and there's several more people back home, we'll do anything we can to help you. The one thing we have is experience. That experience, my dad told me experience was gained because you made so many mistakes. Well, we've made them all. And some of them we made more than once. But after a while, we learned, what did they really just say? And you can't stay ahead of them. So I'm going to ask you a question. How many people in this room have ever testified before a legislative committee? Now, that's pretty good. Their lobbyist, whoever they hire, is going to be there every single day, day in and day out. and they're gonna tell you, oh, okay, you got 3 minutes. What do you say in 3 minutes? Everybody does the same thing. They get up there and blunder a little bit, and you tell everybody this, and we did this. You use 45 seconds just introducing yourself. So, you know, it becomes a little self-defeating. And they'll tell you that it happened to us. A group of us, there must have been 8 or 9. We all submitted our documents. They said, well, a group of people is not a person. Corporation's a person, so Casella can do everything they want. They get 15 minutes. But a group of people is not a person. So we submitted it individually. So each one of us, 9 of us, should have had 15 minutes. Well, guess what they did? To make it more streamlined and convenient for all concerned, they grouped all 9 of us together. We had 15 minutes. So a group of people wasn't a person, but a group of persons became a group. The craziest thing, you know. So another thing you need to know, and Laura touched on it, DEP, Department of Environmental Protection, is not a protection agency. It's a regulatory agency. You can go down there tomorrow and they'll give you an application to do whatever, and if you check all the boxes off, you've met the requirements to be regulated. It's that simple. They don't care about the environment. They have regulations to protect the environment, but you go down through and check them off and you say, well, okay, they met all the minimum requirements to protect the environment. And you end up with a landfill. I'll give this to you.
Thank you, Vera. These folks are available to us. I just want to be clear. What we have in common is a landfill. There's different names for whatever, state-owned, private-owned, whatever owned. They all have something in common. They're major sources of pollution, they're major sources of revenue for whoever owns them, etc. While AIM is proposing to reopen this landfill for so-called statewide construction, statewide wood waste, statewide whatever incidental waste is. Rules change, contracts change. These folks have been through it. Their contracts change. Once the foot is in the door, the cheapest way to do trash is dump it in the ground. That's the cheapest way. It ain't the best way. There's other ways to do business. We've got to force business to change. We've got to force the situation to change. The environment is now hitting us in the face, right in our faces. This is a big money maker for AIM. Who knows? My sense is they may be talking with Casella on how to work together on this. They self-regulate. I've talked to DEP. I've talked to the project manager. I've talked to the new project manager. I've been up in that landfill many times. They self-regulate. This is not something we check their methodology. That's what they do. I've read all the reports. They report once a year. They hire somebody that goes up there and they look around and they write a report. The report is so-so. The report there's already serious problems. They have self-reported serious problems, but there's many more. We've got PFAS issues. Landfills are loaded with PFAS issues. We've got an outfall pipe that doesn't work very well here. It's pouring junk right now just below the Bucksport Pizza is. It's right there. We've got groundwater issues right now that are going this way and out. Arsenic is going up, not just down, it's going up. We're 4/10 of a mile, and Katrina's going to show us an overlay here in a minute how close this damn thing is to vital water sources here in town. But we've got to force a change. We've got to say no. And we've got to ask our town officials to be strong and to represent us, because there's nobody that wants this thing. There's nobody that should want this thing. We've got to force changes. There's different ways to do business. There's different ways to create insulation that now goes into these landfills. You can make it out of wood products. Right now, it's the cheapest. Landfills are the cheapest. That's what's going to happen. Once it's opened, contracts change, lobbyists are powerful, etc. And contracts get changed every few years. Oh, we need to revise it. We need to do this. We need to do that. No way. Not here. Not anywhere. Our friends have suffered for a long time. So I'll stop for a minute, but we need your help. We need seriously to get on this, because remember, it's a big money maker for AIM. It's a big money maker for whoever they hire. There's a lot of money in trash. They'll offer you some money, but we can't accept money for poison. We can't accept money for business as usual. So I wanted to welcome a friend who has come to speak to us, Mr. John Banks, who some of you may know, who was a longtime warrior for the Penobscot Nation and has come down and has got a little statement for us, and I hope we listen. That mic right there.
I get to look at these guys all the time.
I think this one's on.
Yeah, okay.
Okay. Good evening. My name is John Banks. I live in Morrill.
Can you use the mic, please? How about if I stand with you, John? Is that okay?
Just turn this around like this. How does that work? Well, I want to thank you all for coming out tonight, and I want to thank the organizers of this event. This is very important to the Penobscot Indian Nation. My name is John Banks. I live in Orono, and I'm a member of the Penobscot Indian Nation. I recently retired from the tribe after a 40-year career as the tribe's Natural Resources Director. In Indian country, the Penobscot tribe is known as a riverine tribe. That's because our culture, traditions, and history are inextricably tied to the Penobscot River watershed. Threats to the ecological integrity of the watershed are viewed by many tribal citizens as the continuation of the genocidal actions of the state of Maine government toward our indigenous populations. Another landfill in the Bucksport area would be the fourth in the watershed. Starting upstream, there's the state-owned Dolby landfill on the West Branch. Maine DEP officials have informed us that the unlined Dolby landfill is already leaking contamination, including arsenic, into the river. In the Lincoln area, there's the Carpenter Ridge state-owned landfill, which served as an ash dump and who knows what else for the Lincoln Pulp and Paper for many years. The Carpenter Ridge landfill is bordered on 3 sides by Penobscot Nation lands, including traditional hunting and gathering areas that have been used for millennia. And as we heard tonight, I'm learning that it appears that they're starting to move on the Carpenter Ridge landfill. As Laura mentioned, they are starting to notify the abutters up there.
And then, of course, in West Old Town and Alton, we have the Juniper Ridge Landfill, which is what we heard about tonight from our guest. It's only a few miles from the Penobscot Reservation, which includes over 200 islands in the main stem of the video. Currently, the toxic leachate from Juniper Ridge is being trucked to Nine Dragons Mill in Old Town and discharged into the river without adequate treatment. These landfills pose a real and severe threat, not only to the Penobscot Nation, but to the entire watershed, including those people, businesses, and all entities that use the river. With the recent $65+ million investment through the Penobscot River Restoration Project, the river is slowly making a turn for the better. Migratory fish populations, great blue herons, ospreys, and the whole array of interconnected biota are benefiting. So let's do our part to continue protecting, conserving, and restoring this great watershed that has sustained my tribe for 10,000 years. Please reject the proposed Bucksport landfill. Thank you.
Katrina.
Okay, Katrina's going to give us a little bit of a layout of where the landfill, leachate, et cetera, is in relation to us.
So my name's Katrina, and I've lived in Bucksport for about 20 years. And I put together these slides as I was researching the proposal and how it would impact the Bucksport area. So the following slides are meant to help people visually see where AIM landfill is and understand some of the current issues it has. So the landfill is surrounded in the green area. And I used the CIS maps on the town website to measure distances. So this is the AIM landfill, this area. I measured to, and if you can scroll up a little bit, Tracey. This Scott's Lane. This is Evergreen Lane. I measured from the right here to the end house on Evergreen Lane. It is 0.2 of a mile. It's not very far. I also measured from here in the landfill to the last house on Scott's Lane, and it was just under 0.2 of a mile. This whole neighborhood, by the way, was put in afterwards, and they are on private wells, not on town water. So that can raise a problem. Can you scroll back up, Tracey, a little bit? Yeah. And I also measured from here to just inside Silver Lake, and it is about 0.4 of a mile, and that is our drinking water supply. So it is also dangerously close. I actually measured C, but Penobscot River is right here, and there's a cove called Lawrence Cove, and it is 0.3 of a mile to Lawrence Cove. So, and the problem with our landfill is it's up above and it's very close to a subdivision and the Penobscot on the other side. So there's lots of potential damages. Can we do the second slide? So this is a slide, this was the hydrology report from January 31st, 2022, and it basically shows that the landfill has essentially not been well cared for For example, this is page 2, deer puncture holes in cell 7 of the geomembrane, the covering. Gas vents appear broken, repairs needed, no stockpiles that they use to prevent fire. And then if you even scroll down a little further, there's all the well monitoring. So arsenic levels significantly elevated, upstream, up gradient, down gradient, dissolved metals, iron and manganese, as well as, so it's just spewing toxic stuff already. And it is only a partially lined landfill, just so you know. Next slide. This is what we were just talking about. These are the landfill monitors. The ones that were most impacted are in here. There's not a lot on this side. Oh, this one was as well. And so if you just think about the neighborhood, this is the one that was the most significantly impacted. Your neighborhood's just down here. I mean, it's all close. And my point is, we're really close. And then I have, my last slide is about what we've done with the leachate. So up here is the leachate storage vault. There's a pipe that comes here, joins, and then it comes down and drops into Penobscot Bay just behind or in front of the Bucksport pizza place. So it's this outlet where it comes through. And right now, that is currently untreated leachate because when they took the mill down, they also removed the leachate treatment place. So it's dumped directly in. It's legal by the DEP. They got a permit for it. And I would say, even though it's legal, it's unjust and it's absolutely wrong. Just because something's legal does not make it correct. And I think that's it for me. Thank you.
I think one of the things that these folks have brought home, and also my own experience, I've talked with DEP extensively. They are they don't accountable for when you do. All this stuff has been known for years. They've been out of compliance since 2016. Nothing happens. Their lobbyists are stronger than we are. They need to put this stuff someplace, and it goes into the land. We're going to make some changes. So to think that you're going to be saved by a state agency is naive. They do the best they can. They're overwhelmed. They have right now a PFAS situation in the state where they've just, that's where their energy is. They've hired 17 people to deal with that. We've got PFAS coming out of here right now. It's coming out of here. It's going into the river. It's going into the ground. It's going wherever it's going. You go up there right now, they're pumping the leachate pond out. It's so big. It was too big. They're pumping it out. And they've been pumping it out for a long time. It smells like sulfur if you go up in there. Okay? So there's lots of things going on. These folks have put up with something for a long time. It started out as a mill landfill. It has now become a behemoth for all kinds of garbage from everywhere. This was a landfill that was started by the mill. The mill gave us jobs, it supported the economy, it paid big taxes, it did a lot of things. It also polluted, but it gave a product, it gave paper. There was a product, there was a trade-off. This thing is nothing. This is trash for a little bit of money, and we want to be able to do it. They're gonna work hard at being able to do this. We ask our town fathers and mothers. These folks are a wealth of knowledge. They've been doing this for a long time, and bless them for coming down and helping us out, because we have a lot in common, and we need help. We need serious help from our town council. We need serious help from our state legislators. We need help. But the citizens are strong. We're not going to let this happen, okay? Just understand that. It ain't happening. But it can be made a little easier if our town government, if our state government gets on the ball and takes a serious look at a bad waste problem that we have, and we force a new direction other than just throwing it in the damn ground. So it's open to you guys.
For the question, if folks come up to the mic, I'm going to turn it back around. And we're going to do our best to moderate just so everybody who wants to say something or has a question is heard. So if we do have to cut anybody off, it's just in the interest of all voices at the table. So apologies ahead of time if that has to happen. So if you have any questions, feel free to just come up to the mic and ask questions, or comments are okay as well.
We got one over here.
It can restore and preserve our natural resources. The river has supported and is again beginning to support the greatest run of Atlantic salmon and 11 other species of anadromous fish in North America, providing a unique fishing opportunity for Maine residents and members of the Penobscot Indian Nation. The legislature declares that the preservation and restoration of the Penobscot River is of the highest priority. No priority is less than that. No priority is higher.
Very nice find. Yeah.
While we're waiting, this young lady's, okay.
Hi there, my name's Calvin Luther. I live in Bucksport, been here 26 years now. Own Penobscot Evergreens Christmas Tree Farm on Route 15. I thank you guys for showing up from Old Town. We appreciate your help, and we'll be using your help, I'm sure, in the future. And I support Don, what you guys have been doing, Bill, Tracy. Thank you very much on our behalf, and I'll help you any way I can.
This young lady's presentation was the most startling thing I think I've ever heard. 2 or 3 things jumped right off the screen to me. 0.2 of a mile. The city of Old Town bought my brother's house from the old, because he was within 1/10 of a mile of the old Town landfill. It was too unlined. That was the second thing. It's not lined. It should be double lined at least. And even then, it's going to leak. And the third thing was that leachate going into the river. Holy cow. So I want to remind you that the Penobscot Nation, please regard them as that elderly uncle that you have that knows everything about everything, because they know everything about that river, and it means the world to them. So listen when they speak, because they know what they're talking about.
Thank you. My name is Kathy Paul. I'm from Penobscot Nation. I'm part of the river. The river is part of me. I've been able to eat fish out of there all my life. I've been able to swim, feel comfortable, have the smell clean, and not smell dead fish and toxins and people getting sick. Well, I don't want to go through all that now. All I want you all to think about is, look, how long is this going to have to take us before we realize? Now we've got PFAS problem. Now it's not just an indigenous problem. It's us all problem. It's a riverine problem. It's us. And I'm going to come and stand here with you whenever you fight. I will even lay in front of the trucks. I'm telling you, we don't need another one down here. I was very upset. And I'm just letting you know you have my support.
When I saw Katrina's slides, Tracey here. When I saw Katrina's slides, I was startled as well because we went through a heart and soul process in our town. And one of the things, I think there were 4 or 5 of us who suggested, I walk my dog Bailey down by the dock, by the pizza place, and one day she jumped in. I had no idea. She drinks out of the puddles. She swims in the puddles, right down at Bucksport House of Pizza. So many of us, and we weren't connected as friends, but we thought, what a great place for a dog park, right? So I just, seeing that slide, thank you, it just scares me for our future. Not just for a dog park down there, obviously that's not town land and we couldn't do that, but the thought was there. Citizens see that river for recreation, tourism, sustenance. There's about to be a salmon farm. Who would eat those fish, really? So I'm worried about so many aspects of this, as well as the first town council meeting I went to in Bucksport. Sherry Mitchell handed each councilor a braid of sweetgrass because we, from what I understand, Paul, if I can remember, we voted to.
Hi, folks. My name's Cheryl Spencer, and I'm from Old Town. And if you're like most people in Maine, most of your wealth is probably in your home, right? And when you think about, we've lived in our home for almost 45 years. And when you think about passing that home on to your offspring or your grandchildren or someone else in your family who might be interested in having that home, but you know that the water's polluted and the ground may be polluted and you don't know what you're breathing every day, and you almost don't want your children in that kind of situation, and where does that leave you? You can't get rid of that home because the next owners will be exposed to that too, and it eats away at you. So do what you can now to prevent any further damage, and hopefully hold somebody's feet to the fire to get the damage you already have cleaned up. We all need to be in this together.
A few minutes ago, I read you some definitions. Now we're going to have a quiz. So this is a testimony of a gentleman who owns a trucking company. And I want you to think about what you hear, and then I'm going to ask Ed to tell you what it means. Every time one of my trucks hauls a load of mulch, bark, or wood pellets from Maine to New Hampshire or Massachusetts, we haul a load of demo back to Reenergy, then a load of residuals from Reenergy to Juniper Ridge. It's just residuals, right? Ed, tell them what the bypass is.
Well, for one thing, the residuals is over 90% of the inputs. So it's almost all residuals. right? So it means is it's just a conduit for waste importation. And it's, I think, it's mostly Casella's waste from out of state. You know, Casella, good company, and they're very good at somehow getting towns and other individuals and businesses to sign contracts. But it's the way I just picture it as we sign a legally binding contract. We sign in pen. Theirs is like pencil or disappearing ink. You know? But it's all, they don't have that moral compass, from my observation. Some of them, you know, I know a couple of them. And, you know, I think, leaving here tonight, I think there's one thing we might want to think about doing when we talk to our legislators, when the topic comes up. Say, like John was saying, there's 3 state-owned landfills in Maine, right? They're all in Penobscot County, in the Penobscot watershed. This isn't Penobscot County, but the line's 8 miles or whatever it is, you know? So, right in this Penobscot Valley, there would be 4 landfills taking waste from around Maine, and really once they get started, you're not gonna be able to tell. There's no gatekeeper. They are the gatekeeper. It's a fox watching a hen. It's not a good situation. So let's say to the rest of the state, hey, we'll be responsible. We want to take care of our own waste, manage our own waste, okay? And there's ways to do that, to cut, get the volume way down, get the organics out. Don't throw your old salads into your trash, you know? Get the organics out, right? Things like that. And that t-shirt I was wearing in the film, everybody knows it says Ralphie's Green Team and zero waste on the back. And zero waste is a concept with adherence that they're trying so hard to teach people how to do this. Well, Ralphie is a buffalo. He's the mascot of the University of Colorado. So how I got that t-shirt was my son and 2 of our granddaughters volunteered down there at a football game. 50,000 people come into the stadium. They have like 2 barrels of trash, right? 50,000 people spend all afternoon there. How do they do that? I don't know, but it's done. It can be done, you know? There's ways to develop. Don mentioned this insulation material from wood happening right here in Madison, Maine. Great idea. There's a product called gravel, which is, it's like gravel, but it's made out of glass. Somehow they fill it full of air, and it's made for like insulating around foundations. Amazing stuff in Vermont. So these things are happening. We just need to help them to develop and just be conscious, be aware of our personal waste impacts, and you know, just try the best we can. But it seems like it's hard for us to know how we're doing, you know, as a county or even as a state, if we can't close the borders of Maine, you know, and we don't really know which of it is ours or not, you know. And in a more perfect world, the waste you must produce, whether it ends up in stuff you just can't get rid of, otherwise it's going to end up in a landfill or an incinerator, which is slightly less bad, right? And if things were right, whatever towns do the best job with recycling, or diverting, not even get to the recycling stage, just divert it. You know, reduction right from the beginning. Have the lowest trash output per person, might have the lowest rate per ton when you do have to dispose, just something to incentivize good behavior. So.
Ed mentioned the recycling part. Probably 10 years ago or so, I got this bright idea. The state of Maine should charge $4 a ton for everything that went in the landfill. No exceptions, 0 exceptions. And we would, I got the idea because of this in-state waste and out-of-state waste and where's it come from. So I figured out that if we charge $4 a ton, at the end of the first fiscal year, we could reimburse every town or municipality in Maine, dollar for dollar, every ton of that they put in the landfill, municipal solid waste. But by tracking all of the town's recyclables, we could reimburse them $3 for every dollar they put into recycling. And after we paid everybody all back, and some of them 3 for 1, we still had $26 million left over. And my bright idea was, okay, we're just going to divide it up amongst the school districts. You get 1 kid, you get $1. You get 1,000 kids, you get $1,000. That was it, just 1 for 1 for every kid. And that didn't make it too far. Those lobbyists took care of that so quick. They didn't care about that extra $26 million, because at the time we were funding education 55%. That would have been a step towards that. So another thing, have you ever considered maybe doing a little radius around the landfill and taking a survey of how many's had cancer or tumors, including people and their pets? We did that at the old town landfill. It was only a half a mile radius. It was starving. So anyway, I can't do much.
The ideas are obvious. There's many ideas. This is just the cheapest way to do it. It benefits a few. It benefits the stockholders of the big and powerful. Casella's a big and powerful outfit. They may be in cahoots here at some point. AIM is a bigger, more powerful organization that wants to reopen this. They perhaps need municipal help. I appreciate our town councilor, Paul Bissonette, coming tonight. I hope the rest of you are watching, because we don't want you to partner with them at all. This has to be stopped. It has to be said no to now, or we're going to be in real trouble. We are in trouble now. Our children are going to be in worse trouble. Our grandchildren maybe will make it. We've got this different ways of doing business. We've got ideas. There's different ways that are happening in Massachusetts, different ways that are happening in Europe, etc. We just got to stop the madness as it is now. And that have come down to share with us. We're going to try to pull this together. We have a song that our allies, that our friends from the Penobscot Nation are going to sing to us with, and
maybe before the song, I have.
Oh well, we have another input. Yeah.
Okay, one last comment or question.
I already know what I'm going to see when I turn around. A room full of my peers with a lot of gray hair.
Yeah.
Listen, David. Well, and when I say my peers, there's quite a few still older than I and a few younger. I would venture to guess that maybe Derek is the youngest person in the room. So here's my challenge. Every group I meet with says the same thing. Where's the next generation? They are not convinced yet that we're really serious about cleaning up our messes. Our messes and our parents' messes and our grandparents' messes. The young people are scared to death of their future, and they aren't convinced that we're really serious about it. So talk to your young friends. There's so many simple things we can do. When you go into a restaurant in Bucksport, Maine, if they give you a plastic straw, ask the restaurant owner or manager to consider recyclable straws and stop forcing us to take plastic into our lives. Our state representative is here tonight. Thank you, Ron Russell. Is it okay if I announce what's happening Saturday morning? Of course. Ron Russell is going to be in the district for a meeting with his constituents. It will be at the fish hatchery at 9 o'clock in the morning, Saturday, till 11, correct?
Till 11.
Thank you. The last thing I would say is don't forget that we are all here to connect the dots. We can't work on this environmental issue without working on all of the attached social issues, the pollution that affects marginalized people nationwide in a much bigger way. We can do something exciting and wonderful in Bucksport, Maine at this moment in our cultural, personal, human history. Appreciate all of the people that are here, and glad we're working together.
Thank you, David. And before our good friends sing us into the night, if you have any questions or would like more information on how to contact any of our speakers, Sunlight Media Collective who made the film, we'll leave all of that information with Johanna, who's been helping us tonight with technology, and we'll leave it with Brown Hall. So it's sort of a central place for you to reach out, if that's okay, Johanna, to contact.
Round of applause for Johanna for doing all this.
All right, and thanks all for coming. Please do stick around to hear this song.
Get a drink. She's great. This is yours. Thank you. Thank you.
You know, they talked about little kids, and I just want to say one thing too. I have grandchildren, and I'm really worried what they're going to face when they grow up. I'm lucky. And when I have a grandchild say, Mimi, I wonder what it's going to be like for me. Will I be able to go outside? Take that home and tell everybody, maybe we won't have a landfill. All right. What are we singing? I guess we want to sing for the water, which doesn't require a drum. It's the water for out there and the water in us. Ready? Nibi Gazamunaba Kachi Wali Wani Nibi Kachida Nida Amu Bena Nibi Gazamunaba Kachi Wali Wani Nidi Kachida Nida Amu Bena Nibi Gazamunaba Kachi Wali Wani Nibi Kachida Nida Congratulations.